Welcome everyone to the winter version of the Digital Dish.
Can we tell it's winter? We're all huddled up in our, turtlenecks and sweaters.
Yeah, Lois was just complaining about how dark it is. It's like it's night for her, so I get it. Anyway, so hey, today, Lois, we have a really interesting woman, Purvee Kondal, who is a thinking woman at large. She's got a really great back history that I want to explore a little bit, and so I want to bring her on, and we're going to talk about. Well, I'm going to surprise you because I think we'll get the background from. Yeah. So anyway, let's bring Purvee on and say hi to everybody.
That sounds good.
Hi, Purvee.
Hi, Lois. Hi, Jeanne. How are you guys?
We are good.
Hi, Purvee.
Go ahead. We're working on the winter stuff.
I'm a little bit intrigued because Jeanne is like thinking woman at large. And so I don't quite know what to expect. I must admit, I feel a little bit off guard, like what is Purvee going to talk about? So I'm pretty excited about this conversation.
Well, so first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. This is what you guys do is absolutely amazing. And I love the work you're doing in terms of, getting women and everybody in general to start thinking about digital transformation. What do we do? So women, thinking at large is really women. There's so many like you guys and myself and others out there who really think ahead, right? Where things are going. I think as women, we have to be much more proactive about where our journey is and what we want to do with our lives and what we want to accomplish than to be reactive. So I've always thought ahead. I think I've always thought 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of where the world was. And so it kind of makes sense. And my career-wise, right, I've actually led sourcing and procurement functions for very large companies, retail, financial services, right? I started my journey actually in pharma. So I've had exposure to that. And I've sort of learned a lot of things along the way. And so it's made me kind of, always be thinking to say, well, if we could do it over there, why can't we do it over here? Why can't we do it this way? So I'm always the one that asks the question, well, why do we do it this way? So I think it's a perfect introduction, Jeanne.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your history, about your background. That's something that's always interesting for our younger group who are looking at how do you get into this.
It's a little bit fascinating because, right, like, look, I don't know anybody, even up until now, I've ever met that says, hey, I want to go and head procurement and sourcing functions. Most people don't even know what they are, right?
That's right.
It's,
yeah.
Right? It's not one of those things, right? The degree in procurement you can get. And quite frankly, I kind of fell into it a little bit because I was on the other side. I was on the sales side. My very first job was doing sales. And I had a client that said, hey, you're so good with all these suppliers. We've got like this thing, procurement things we're starting. What do you think about coming and working for us, right? And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Okay, I think that makes sense. So I ended up in that. And partly I also ended up in it because what I realized a long time ago, there wasn't a professional discipline to how procurement and sourcing are done, how we think about things, right? So I've always been a step ahead. I've helped support, when we outsource, when we offshore. Now I know that could be a dirty word, I get it. But really, at the end of the day, we've got to go where the business is trying to get to. And I've always been ahead of that, right? And supporting that journey. So my journey really started off in sales, ended up procurement. And I started at a very lower level, went out, and I did at the end of the day, you got to deliver. And when you deliver, if you are in a good supporting environment in a good company, they're going to continue to grow you. I got to learn a lot. And when I say growth, I don't always mean by title-wise, right? Most people mistake it. They think, hey, I want to, I've been doing this job for 3 years. I better get the next title. It's not that. It's about the learning and the growth and what value you're bringing to the table. You're bringing something new to the table, right? So my journey, and so I ended up, all the way as the head of the function, as CPO, and and it's been interesting, right? I still miss my day-to-day world, right? And so it kind of goes back to you got to learn, right? So I did retail, and I went into retail. I was in a regulated world. And I decided to go into retail because what I realized, retail had literally zero people, support, investment to do this work. So how do people do that? So my journey was really about pushing the envelope in an industry to get the right investments in people, to get, education, get more thought process, thinking process, put some tools in place, give our people tools so they can be their best selves. Now, I also kind of realized that, we have a lot of people who would rather not, right? So
Right.
that's kind of my journey. My journey's always been about just that push the envelope to say, I want to leave my world in a better place than how I found it. And that's kind of been my journey. And it's going to continue to be my journey until probably I die or retire, one or the other.
I love the fact that you fell into this. I think serendipity can be really interesting and important. So you and I talked a little bit about how to support women in the new digital age, and I think this ties back to what you just told us. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What are the challenges, and what are the things that we can do to make an adjustment to that?
So I'll kind of preface it by, I think the challenges are different depending on the industry, right? So like, for example, something like retail is, retail's not, retail's the fact that there's not enough people to do the work, the amount of work that's coming people's way, or the tool or digitization support is there, they're far behind. But then if you go to a place like pharma, for example, right, they're much more ahead, right? So it really depends.
Well, it's organic. I feel like it's organic growth on retail versus a structured growth for something. Yeah.
Right, 100%. And there's also regulated versus unregulated industry, right? So,
that's true. Yeah.
We got to balance the bureaucracy with actually really making progress, right? So there's the balance of that. So I think it depends on where that industry is. And I think depending on that, where a woman would have spent the career. And when I say career, I don't mean 15, 20 years of their life, right? It could even be something as simple as 4 or 5 years that they spent somewhere, 7 years. And if they haven't really been under an umbrella of a structure that allows for that thinking process, allows and embraces, hey, let's go put the basics. Hey, can we have a standardized process for this little thing that we all do this 50 different ways? Can we a little small tool so we're not managing $1 billion, $2 billion on a spreadsheet? Like if that thought process from a leadership perspective and in an organizational culture perspective isn't in there, it's going to be hard, right? So I think as a woman, you have to think about and say, what culture am I in, right? Am I in a culture that embraces innovation, that embraces sense of urgency, that embraces, investment in the people, that embraces, making mistakes and say it's okay. Let's go do that. Is it in so I think you have to think about it from that point of view. And if depending on where the woman is at on her journey in her career, they have to think about that. I've made a very conscious choice in my career to change industries, because I fundamentally believe that my work can be done and our functions work can be done across any industry. It's industry agnostic. There is about a 5 to 7% variance, but that can be learned, right? That's the fun part of learning, right? Or not. But fundamentally, right, a lot of, especially, and this is true in support function, HR is very similar, IT is very similar, a lot of stuff is similar, right? Those are transferable skills. And so I think as a woman, if you're choosing to stay in one industry or one company for a very long time, you either have to kind of say, you know what, this is all I'm going to do. Then let's stop complaining and just keep your head down and do your job and get a paycheck and go home. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or if you really want to be a woman that says, hey, I really want to do something, right? I have ideas. I want to do something. Then it's on you to kind of go transform yourself, and along with it, you're going to transform others.
Well, do you feel like with some of the, I guess, the tools or some of the Gen AI type of capabilities, because they talk about it democratizing the way that people work, because it is no longer necessary for a big, huge team with, a degree in computer science to be able to actually make a big impact to a company, by virtue of, as you talked about, being curious, about doing a little bit of experimentation. I mean, I've seen it already where you have, even in our firm, you have people who are, working on they could be working in HR, they could be working in many different aspects of our company. And by virtue of having Copilot or ChatGPT or something available to them, they're exploring and finding amazing new ways to support what they do. And it's a great opportunity to give them the stage and say, look at what this person is doing. You could take that and you can kind of riff off of that and go do something else. I mean, what's your thought about this particular junction and the type of technology available? Is it actually a really big catalyst for women at this point in time?
Oh, 1,000%, right? 1,000%. I've been a big advocate of AI. And again, I kind of go back to, people landed in our function either to retire or to die when, I think that's how people kind of gather themselves, right? Passion in what you do matters. And AI, when it came out, I had somebody, one of the managing partners, kind of laughed at me, say, "What does a procurement person know about AI? Let me go tweet about it." This is when Twitter was a thing, right? And I was like, you know what? And that's okay, right? I mean, I'm gonna learn. I went into an AI company. I learned, from inside. So it is important. It's not going away, right? It is here to stay. It is going to transform our lives. What it's not going to do, at least not at this time, it's not becoming the Terminator, right? So we can kind of rest assured about that. Could it happen one day? Possibly. But right now, it's probably, when it started in around 2019 and all that, which is this pre-Gen AI, I used to talk about it's like a baby. It's like a 5-day-old baby, a 5-week-old baby. Now AI is probably, maybe it's like a toddler, right? Having a little tantrum syndromes, right? All of that, right? And then, just in the last couple of years, it is absolutely transformative. And you have to embrace it. I think women, right, we have to embrace it. If we don't embrace it, right, we're going to be one of those, we could see ourselves in a place where, we're not leading the change. If we're not, guess what? Someone else is going to lead for us. So some people may be okay with it. I'm not. So I'd rather lead the change than to be driven by the change. It's going to make a huge difference. There's so much mundane work, especially in support function. You think about HR function, right? You think about IT, you think about procurement, sourcing, some of these support functions. There is so much mundane work that's there that everybody, they hate it up to the core. It's like the bane of their existence. But so why not let AI fix that for us or work with it to make it better so that it can help us? So I think, to me, you have to embrace it. And quite frankly, anyone that's not ready and willing to embrace and learn, be that person, should ask themselves, do I need to retire at this point and just move on and do something completely different? But guess what? You're going to find it everywhere. You're going to find it in sales. You're going to find it in marketing. Every function is going to have that. So for me, as a woman, I think we've always fought a lot of good fights. And I think we shouldn't be just throwing down the gauntlet, right? We should be ready to fight, right? And say, okay, how are we going to fight? We're going to learn, and we're going to become enablers and not detractors and resistors to the change.
So one of the things you and I talked about a little bit, and I think I would love to spend a little more time on it, is how do we, Lois and you and me, how do we support women in because I feel like AI can be intimidating. You're like, oh, is it secure? Is everybody gonna know it's me? Is it this? But how can we do things to support not just that, but tool usage, and not just AI, but all the tools? How do you see the role of bringing women in an organization and getting them excited and supporting them in learning and expanding their skills?
I think, I'll tie back to Lois's point, right? AI, especially Gen AI, it's all about democratization, right? And what that, at its core, is all about transparency, right? Information should be available at a fingertips, at a moment's notice, right? It shouldn't need 20 different people's approvals, layers to get there. Now, granted, if the information is wrong, or someone who's interpreting it wrong and doesn't understand it well enough, like an AI or a person, right? That could be problematic, right? So I think it's you have to approach it from a similar point of view, right? To say, it's not that if you're afraid of providing data and analytics into what you do in your day-to-day life, if you're resisting demonstrating where you're spending your time, what value you're adding to the function or to the team or to your supervisor or to your peers, then you might want to kind of say, oh, am I, what am I looking to hide, right? Is it, and I think we have to ask ourselves that, right? it's not about hiding, right? It's about just be transparent. I'm a big advocate. I've been a big advocate of data, and let data drive the decisions. And the data is telling you one thing, and people are complaining about something different, it means there's a problem with not in the data, but really just the culturally, right? So I think part of it, Jeanne, it goes back to, right, the idea of how do we make sure that we're as transparent as possible in demonstrating what we're bringing to the table, what we're delivering, how AI is performing, quite frankly, right? That's also another piece of it. Don't be afraid just to say, okay, this thing is throwing out junk. But don't just say that, hey, this thing is throwing out junk. Work with it, right? It's like with any time, right? When you work with a different team member, etc. Your job, the way you're going to be successful is you work with them. And if you're not willing to work with them, you might want to question what you want to do.
Yeah, I did I looked at a study on, is there a fear, especially for knowledge workers, which we all are, for the impact that AI is going to have. I think to your point, if you try to ignore it or you're scared of it, I understand that you might be in a particular role that you feel comfortable with, and changes, it can be hard. But in this study, which surprised me, it broke out those who were asked about your fear or your thought of AI coming. And it was actually the older folks, the older spans, who was more comfortable with it than those who were at the younger levels. And at first I thought, it surprised me. But then the more I thought about it, even just myself, right? I think, I have too much on my plate. I'm tired. I want to end work at a reasonable time. And, something like as simple as, you're trying to work with a bunch of data, or you're trying to work with a bunch of responses. It took me a while to catch on the ChatGPT train, until it was late one night and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have hours of work in front of me to summarize all this information. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me try this thing. And it did it in like 15 minutes, right? I was done. And so then I'm thinking, maybe there is something to the fact that there's a personal ambition. You may not want to, advance way up in your career, or this might not be the path for you to expand or to, increase your level, but just by virtue of the fact of quality of life. I mean, this could be a point in time for many people that quality of life is improved because you have a job assistant, right? You have someone or something sitting next to you to help you do your job more effectively, so I can, not have to work late, not have to work the weekends. So I think there's really different ways of looking at this for no matter where you are in your career, no matter what your ambition is, there's an answer for you to just invest a bit of time and make it work for you the way you want it to work. And I'm curious if you see that.
Yeah, no, Lois, you're spot on, right? I think personal empowerment is paramount, to your point, right? I love the fact that, even though you're a little standoffish with it, but then you decided to say, let me try it and let me embrace it, and you learn something out of it, right? I think that personal desire is very important, right? I'll give you a perspective. I had somebody, on my team, and the second thing you brought up was this idea of, I don't have the time. I 100% get it, right? I get it. Like, nobody has the time. There's so much going on. But I think you have to ask yourself and say, am I willing to make that time, right? I made the time. I used to, listen to, webinars at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Now, granted, not every woman can do that, right? And even I questioned myself whether I could do it every time, right? But the reality was it tied back to personal empowerment, right? Somebody in my team is basically, right, wouldn't allow anyone else on the team to continue to move forward because she wanted to be there and she wanted to be along the journey on everything, but she didn't have the time. So it's kind of, right, instead of struggling with this idea that says, hey, my peer can do 5 things really fast, really well, and I can only do 2, can I leverage and work with my peer and give me a little extra time so I can go actually work on things that supposedly matters to me, right? So I think it goes to personal empowerment, the personal desire, right? If someone is in a role that if they are walking in saying, you know what, I don't want to be in this role. I don't like this work. I haven't been in this, this job for 4 years. I've been doing it and I don't want to do it. They shouldn't be in that role, right? Leave it for somebody else who's more passionate. Leave it for someone who's going to make a difference if you're not the person wanting to make that difference. Perfectly okay, right? It's just, I think it's the choices, and the choices go back to personal empowerment. What, at the end of the day, what matters to you and what do you want to do, right?
So you both inspired me. While I was here, I'm writing down ideas like, oh, I could use that for this, and I could do this, and I could, yeah. So you've inspired me. So thank you.
Well, it's a good point, though, right? We have to inspire each other. We have to push each other too.
Yeah.
We see women not, behaving in a manner that doesn't help us. We have to be willing to call that out if we're not, or we push them, right? Inspire them, but also push them, because otherwise,
This is why Lois and I do this.
Yeah, well, to that point, so Jeanne and I were on a call last night. It was an internal call, and it was with a number of other women, and we just happened to be talking about a topic. But, I think there's an opportunity for all of us, which I think is probably what motivates you, is not everyone is at the same point of knowing what to do next, how to take the next steps, but yet they also might feel a little bit concerned, am I going to ask a stupid question? Or is there a safe space where I can have a conversation and know what to do? Because I don't have, this great career, all this knowledge, and I haven't been able to keep up with the webinars and know the latest vernacular. And I haven't been able to, maybe they haven't been working recently simply because I took some time off for their family. That's okay. So how to engage, and is it a way for women to help other women to say, it's okay. You can ask it. There's no stupid questions. I mean, we say that, but it feels like if I haven't been able to invest the time, is it moving without me? And I think that's a really important thing, to support each other and help us kind of help each other out to take advantage of this.
Yeah. So Lois, it's like, I think you're spot on, right? I think there's a couple of things. So one is, I've always believed, assume good intent, right? I've always fought for my team, what they need. And, I'll go fight for my stakeholders. I'll go fight for, to me, I'm like, that's my job, right? As a leader, you have to fortify and help everybody, right? Now, I will say my observation has been a lot of women are not comfortable coming in, right? There's an assumption made that when you're handed something to do, you know it all. The reality is, when you don't know it, just raise your hand. Assume good intent. Assume the same space. Raise your hand if you're not comfortable in a group environment. Raise it with someone, especially if you see someone, right, who's more senior to you, who's been there, done that. Just like, I did this. I did this with a lot of people, both inside work and outside work, right? I actually picked up the phone and said, can I spend like 15 minutes of your time? And it's like, I don't really understand it. Can you walk me through it, right? So if I'm too afraid to ask internally because I feel like the organization culture is not that, right? Then go do that, right? That, without being able to do that, I don't know how we evolve, right? We can pretend we know it, right? And I've seen it where, the project's about to go live, and 3 weeks later, I learned that, it's not done and it's behind. And it's like, how does that happen when I ask you every week, how are things? What can I help you with, right? So you can push you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. And I think at the end of the day, as women, we have to know we're the ones we have to be ready to drink. And when we're, when we need that help, raise the hand. Don't be afraid. None of us know everything, right? And we're learning every day, and things are changing every day. So if we're afraid to do that, I think that's a problem. And that's something we have to kind of say, what's stopping me from doing that? Is it the organizational culture? Right? And if it is, then maybe it's is it the industry? Look at some different alternatives.
So with that in mind, Purvee, what's your next thing? What's going to happen next, do you think? What are you thinking about?
Well, so right now, my biggest thing I'm thinking about is my daughter is about to go to college. And I will say that's my biggest thing right now.
That is a big thing. Yeah.
It's a big journey and a big milestone for her. I'm fully invested in making sure that she is ready for it. Although I learned that she's definitely ready to just go. But professionally, quite frankly, right? Professionally, I'm going to continue to do transformational work. That is my career. That's exactly what I've done. That's who I am. And fundamentally, right? I'm not a status quo person. I've never been. I say that from the get-go. I'm not. If you need somebody to check the box, and I'm not the one, right? But if you need somebody to transform, if you want to, leave a place in a better place or function in a better place than how they found it, then let's have a conversation, right? I mean, I think about the organization, right? For 9 years, was on a status quo way. You try to change it, right? And so I'm always going to be the change agent. I remind people that change happens by more than 50% of the organization stepping up to the change. And I'm never going to give up on the idea of continue to drive change because we need it.
Cool. Well, this is definitely the right time for anybody who enjoys a little bit of change and they like to go
and a challenge,
solve problems. This is the time, right? There is no lack of ability to make changes. We're on a speeding trajectory, so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I think we are going to look back, right? To me, I see this time, especially with AI. We're going to look back 10 years from now and we're going to say, oh my gosh, where the world has gone, right? And those that are ready and willing to lead the change, right, are going to have amazing opportunities, continued opportunities. Those that want to drive the status quo, they'll be around for a while, right? But how long? I mean, we're going to see companies go down because they're not willing to embrace change. Or we're going to see functions go down and change dramatically, right? We have to. Yep. Kind of fun times, actually.
Well, thank you so much, Purvee. It was really, really a delight talking to you. Lois, do you want to add anything?
No, it's been great to talk with you. And, this is the energy I think that we build, right? Everybody can be involved in this journey. There's so many ways to get involved in this journey. And so it's been great to talk to you and just, explore some of those aspects. So thank you very much.
No, thank you both. Appreciate your partnership and your thought process and your ability to think outside the box. So love to be able to talk to people.
Thank you, Purvee.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, Lois, I am inspired. And I have been, little by little, I'm really getting a hold. And I think I told you the story. I did a thing for girls, an all-day thing on last Saturday, and I used AI. I ran an escape room, a cryptographic escape room. It was about women in the 1940s during World War II in America who actually were the main people who decoded cryptography machines. But to make all the escape room clues, I used AI for a couple of riddles and a couple of ideas. So that was fun. So I'm working on it. You guys are inspiring me. I love the conversation about AI. So.
Yeah, well, I think that's the key. I think none of us we shouldn't fall into the trap of being overwhelmed or think that I'm not as smart as the next person next to me. Like, it truly is the time for people to utilize these tools that's right for them, right? There's so many diverse ways that you can do that. And that's what's so great about, this point in time in our technology journey. So it's a fun time. It's a fun time to be for personally and professionally. So Purvee was a great example.
Yes. Well, great talking to you again. And Purvee, of course, our guest. And I think this is a wrap. So thanks everybody for listening.
All right. Thank you.